Let's go do another carotid. This time we're going to add some evoked potentials to it instead of just EEG. Sensory evoked potentials obviously are mediated. We don't need neuromuscular junction unblocked for sensory stuff. So again, running them on rock the whole case is perfectly reasonable. Now we're down to half a MAC of SIVO, and we got some propofol. So this is more of like a TIVA plus technique. Really, TIVA should be TIVA, and if you're adding SIVO, it's not TIVA, but we'll let you slide on that, call it a TIVA plus. Anyways, this is perfectly reasonable when you're having evoked potentials. Again, half a MAC of sevoflurane is probably going to allow you to record some decent sensory evoked potentials. Don't let people tell you that you can't run it at all, even in the context of the rest of your TIVA technique. On the other hand, if they have an underlying pathology and they don't have very solid baseline sensories, this would be the first thing to think about cutting off. So here's the baselines. From an overkill point of view, they're monitoring both ulnar and median nerves in the wrists and left and right EEG, so it's kind of displayed a little bit differently than the other case was on the windows. But again, this where it says right, this is the side of stimulation. So this is right side stimulation of the median nerve and right side stimulation of the ulnar nerve. This response is being recorded from the left brain. So it's a little bit confusing unless you kind of keep that in mind. Now we're starting to see some evidence of insufficient perfusion. The EEG on the left side has definitely gotten lower and slower. There's a little bit of a drop off in these evoked potentials on the left brain from right stimulation than there had been at baseline. You can see that a little bit there, and then there's the EEG compared to the right brain. It's looking like there's less fast frequency and lower amplitude. Not long, so a shunt was placed, as was in the last case because we had these changes, except this time the SSEP changes got worse and essentially disappeared. They're gone. The EEG is still asymmetric on the side that's shunted now, still slower and lower amplitude than the right side. So the shunt is it's not making these signals rebound like it did the last time. The surgeon took that one out and put a second shunt in, and then the signals came back. The EEG is still asymmetric here, but the sensory evoked potentials are starting to improve. It's improving on the EEG, but there's still a little bit of asymmetry. Sensories are all the way back. Upper extremity sensory evoked potentials are really good for carotids because it's really a specific area of the cortex that's perfused by, M1 right off of the carotid. So you're getting a very specific part of the brain that's going to be affected by any blood flow changes from the carotid clamping. EEG is very sensitive, so you get specificity and sensitivity if you combine both of these modalities for a carotid. So here, by the end of the case, the EEG is basically now back all the way to baseline. Looks pretty good. One thing that you might have noted when we're looking at the sensory evoked potential changes is that the corticals dropped out, but the subcorticals didn't. So these are cervical medullary junction and top of the spinal cord, and these are in the cortex itself. So you can see that the hypoperfusion was not affecting, as you would expect, it wasn't affecting down low. It was really only specific to the brain, which really gives us, confidence that that's what was going on there. The first shunt then was evaluated and determined to be faulty, and that's why he removed it and put a second shunt in, which then led to these improvements in the signals back to essentially baseline. The patient did wake up with a mild hemiparesis, but this resolved over the next several weeks. So again, this is sort of a mild sequela that could have been much more dense or permanent. And the surgeon had placed the shunt correctly, so by continuing to monitor and not just saying, okay, the shunt's in, we're saved, he was able to determine that that wasn't adequately perfusing the brain again and took it out and put a second shunt in, which did work.